Hi guys, and welcome back to Higher Hertz. My name is Justin Leopard, your online cello teacher, and today I want to talk about an interesting concept perhaps, something a little different for your practice session, how you can use singing to play better. So this isn't necessarily about becoming also a trained singer. I'm not a trained singer, but you can use singing to play better because the cello and the music that's been created around the cello comes from the voice as source inspiration. So some of the things that make cello so amazing are its vocal qualities, the ability to slide into notes, the ability to have vibrato, just the range and the tone of the instrument, and the ability to breathe with the bow make cello an extremely similar instrument to the human voice in terms of the things it's able to do. So this is one of the things people gravitate to about cello, and it's also one of the reasons why singing can help us play better. Because when we sing something, we're going to have to take breaks to breathe, and there's going to be a certain intuitive way that we're going to sing, and we're going to learn how we want to potentially slur the notes together. Because all of those things are going to happen automatically when we're singing. Even if the tone and the intonation and the rhythm, aren't great because we're not trained singers, that's not really the important thing. The important thing is the phrasing and any of the information that we can gain from singing, where when we're just playing on the cello, sometimes it can be easy, or difficult rather, to just make it feel like it's musical. We get stuck and we're, scrubbing away at the cello, wondering what is the difference between what I'm doing and what I hear. Well, one of the ways we can get there is by singing something. So let's play something and then sing and see if we can improve it. All right, so just to keep it silly, let's do I'm a Little Teapot. So the specific notes for this aren't that important. The point is that you can use this sort of technique for any song that you're trying to learn. So for the sake of argument, let's assume that you already, in other words, know the fingerings for this in the key you're playing in. You're just trying to figure out how to play it better. So, all right, so that was me just playing the notes, and I encountered some things that I feel like are problems with learning cello. So some of the notes felt a little scratchy to me. Maybe some of the notes just had an inconsistent tone with the other notes. It sounds more like I'm playing a simple song on cello than it does I'm playing the most beautiful instrument or one of the most beautiful instruments in the world. So what are some of the things that I would do differently if I sang it? So let me just sing that first phrase. I'm a little teapot, short and stout. All right, so some of the things that I noticed are I started with like a strong sort of downbeat, and the first four notes are very connected. And of course, my tone is actually mostly similar for all of these notes as well, which was not true of the cello. So what we can learn from that is perhaps that we want to do more slurring. And maybe one technique that I really like is where you kind of come into the string as you're playing. So you start very lightly. This is slowed down very lightly. Come in and go out. So when you do that, you leave a halo around the note. It's not stopping. It's just, you're hearing the note and then you're just kind of hearing the pad of the note. And so that can be a really great way to create a more consistent tone because you're being more intentional through all of the notes. So I bet that was a little bit complicated, but let me just play and see if it sounds a little nicer. Okay, so already that sounds actually a lot more like the singing to me. One of the other things that we can decide perhaps is to do a different fingering, to not use the open string, but just to keep this a little bit more like how it would be for a sort of beginner song, we're going to keep the open strings, see if we can actually just work with them and make them sound good. So the next thing that we can sort of do is think about how this fits into the bigger picture of the song. So in this case, the song is very, very simple, but nonetheless, it still has definite sections and it tells a story. I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Here is my handle, here is my spout. So there's a great example. I was just saying, you'll notice where the breaths are. I took a breath. Here is my handle, here is my spout. So I know that I'm going to want a little bit of a pause in the playing. So if I don't take that pause, Now I'm going to try to play that as exactly alike as I can, but I'm just going to add a little pause. And do you hear how already, like, that was the only difference? I tried to play like the same tone and everything, and yet to me it sounds already a lot more musical because of that one little addition of the breath. So that's really what we want to be paying attention to here. Like, what's the breath? What are the notes we're going towards? What's the overall articulation and tone of what we're singing? This is all information that we can then use to decide how we're going to use the techniques of the instrument. So another thing that we might want to do as we're playing this is try to go even further with that concept that I was just talking about, where you're always kind of having the halo of the notes. And this is where slow practice can come in really handy, because you can really slow that down. So the goal there had been to try to never actually lose contact. We don't actually want silence in this, because the only times we're actually really making silence when we're singing is when we're taking our breaths. But even that can be subtle. I'm a little teapot, short and stout. If you include the breathe in, there's always sound happening when you sing. So you don't really, it sounds pretty unnatural. Something like that. I mean, for many reasons. But I was basically just trying to put an unnatural amount of silence between the notes, and it sounds a lot worse. So we're just going to try to play this super connected, but paying attention to the dynamics within each note. All right, so we're really starting to get somewhere, for me at least, really starting to pull the sound out. I think in the beginning, I got a little bit carried away with the legato-ness of it, the smoothness. Legato is smooth bow. And I think if I were singing it, I wouldn't be so schmaltzy with it, probably. So I can improve that by just making it a little bit more conversational, but still beautiful. All right, so we're really starting to get somewhere. By being able to pull the string in between each one of these notes, that really helps us be able to play a more consistent tone than if we're at the mercy of just whatever sharp articulation happens. So one of the things to realize about what makes an instrument sound like an instrument is that the articulation matters a lot. So there's other examples online where you can hear a pitch being played without the very, very first bit of the note. And sometimes like cello and saxophone and guitar all start to sound kind of identical. So a lot of what makes like a note on the cello sound different from a note on another instrument is going to be the front of the note, not when it rings out. So how we start the notes is really, really huge to how we're perceiving the sound. And if we're always starting a lot more gently, at least when we're doing music that needs to have a consistent tone for each of the notes, then we're going to be in much better place for being able to actually play what we intend to play, because we can really shape that. The other aspect to using singing to playing better is to be able to alternate what you're singing with what you're playing and try to create more unity. So there's also people who actually practice playing and singing what they're doing. This is especially true of improvisers, and you find a lot of bass players who do this. A lot of like and the reason why they do that is basically just you are your most natural when you're singing, and they want to feel like every note that they're playing makes sense. It's something that they could have sung. And I guess, the ones who actually perform that way, they just do it so often that it becomes easier for them to do that than not. But doing that a little bit at home will help you whether or not you actually end up performing that way, which ends up being a pretty bold choice and isn't ever okay in classical music unless it's like a contemporary piece that called for that. So in our practice room, what I really like to do is alternate. So let's say we're practicing something like the Swan, a little bit more, it's not exactly a beginner piece, but it is a simple piece, and a little deceptively so too, because it has some shifts that are hard to hit, and there's just a lot of beauty that you want to try to create. It's about the swan over the water being the rolling piano. So you probably have heard this melody. That's why I want to use it. So what I'm going to do is every few beats, I'm going to start singing, and then I'm going to play again. So what this is going to be doing is constantly be reminding me throughout the song, what does my singing intuition say about this? So then once we've done it this way, you could go through and then do it reverse. So start by singing and then playing. Then you've played through the whole thing and you've sung through the whole thing, but it's all been interspliced together. So I'll show you how this works. So it might be a little hard to tell what that was or wasn't doing because I didn't first start by playing a rendition of it. But when you try practicing that way, it really changes the way that you perceive the music. And if you're only used to kind of playing the notes of what you're doing, or especially if you still need to read it, it might be a little bit hard. It might be a little bit jarring, the difference. This is a song I've been playing, a piece I've been playing for, over a decade or more. So I already have that a little bit. And yet, even so, like, I paid so much more attention to the speed of my vibrato when I had gone back and forth with my singing, because unnatural vibrato is such an easy thing to do on cello, but you really want to have it come from what you're hearing. You really want it to be what you would have vocalized, and people listening want to hear that too. So that's using singing to play better. That's about all I have for you guys in this video. Hope you're enjoying all our videos. Let us know in the comments how things are going for you with your cello journey. Once more, I'm Justin Leppard, also known as the Vagabond Cellist, and this has been a production with Higher Hertz. Subscribe below for all our lesson videos, and we'll see you in the next one.